Hey, espresso lovers, Mark here from Whole Latte Love. Nick is going to join me, and we're going to unbox, set up, and go take you through the first use of a Gaggia Classic Evo Pro. So, still in the box right here. We're going live. We can take your questions if you're watching us live. Of course, you might be watching us after the fact. But if you have some questions, we've got Ellie back there and Brian running the show. So they'll be able to get your questions to us. Hey, Nick. Thanks.
Hey, Mark.
Thanks for showing up.
How's it going?
So let's get this out of the box. Now, typically when it arrives at your home, you're going to have it, it'll probably be overboxed.
Overboxed, yeah.
So, but we're not going to go through all that. So let's get this guy out of here.
I do love Gaggia's packaging, though, to be honest with you. The red with the white stripe on there is just kind of an iconic look.
I'm going to let you do the honors and pull away.
There we go.
There we go.
Perfect. So we got our lid here. Oh, nice. I see you went with the Thunder Black.
Yes, the Thunder Black.
Perfect. Got a couple of papers in there I'll have you take out too, because there's just a few key details that we're going to want to cover if you've never... Oh, actually, yeah, I think back here is probably where we want everything, right?
Yeah.
Very nice. But yeah, there's a few key details that we want to go over that are unique to the unboxing experience. So first of all, we have this nice little insert. We're going to cover what this talks about, but basically this goes over how you use your two-way pin and your pressurized portafilter. And then something else too, one of the more befuddling aspects of new espresso machines, it's this little substance we like to call laser film.
And I think we're just going to, you want to take this off. We're going to leave it on for the interest of time.
But to be clear, this white tray is actually a polished steel one.
Yeah.
This is a protective cover called laser film. What that does is it keeps the metal from being scratched when it's in transit. This peels off. Mm-hmm. There are many trays like it. This one is mine.
That one is yours.
And now we'll take this out, and I'll also get our accessories demoed.
Yeah, why don't we
here.
lay those right out front here, and I'll start taking these apart, and we'll talk a little bit about those.
So pulling out the water reservoir, though, this is where we're going to find a few of our accessories that we're going to need. First of all, we have our decompression duct or discharge tube. That's going to connect right up in the machine, and that's where wastewater from the three-way solenoid valve is plumbed out. Our power cord, if you get your machine, you say, there's no cord, I can't plug it in. Well, that's hidden right here in the water reservoir as well. Now the reservoir, apart from being a handy storage container for our additional accessories, is going to need to be rinsed on your first use. And then when we put it back into the machine, you'll see, Brian, can we get a close-up? Yeah, on these two tubes here. We've got two that actually drop down from the machine into the reservoir. This longer one that has the clipped end, that's going to be our inlet. And then the shorter one is our return line that takes wastewater and puts it back in. So first thing I'm going to do off camera, of course, is go give this a quick rinse.
And Nick, I helped you out a little bit here. Since we have a lot of reservoirs here, I pre-rinsed one and partially filled it. And you know what? Let's move the machine right up front here.
Pre-rinse. Oh, partial fill. There we go.
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
This is actually good. I can refill. And one of the things that we have here, this is a BWT pitcher. So these cartridges use the same ion exchange that's featured in our professional BWT filter cartridges. Always make sure that you're using filtered water. Otherwise, make sure that you put on your calendar a regular descaling schedule so that you make sure that you're not letting scale build up inside your machine. So if you use a BWT filter cartridge and you change it regularly in the pitcher, you will not have to descale the machine, and that's going to protect from that calcium buildup, which is one of the biggest causes of issues on a machine like this one.
So some sort of water filtration. We'll talk about a couple other options we have here as well.
That's right.
For that. But if you want to slide that in there.
Let's slide this in. And so once you've rinsed this and put it back into the machine, you're safe to fill from the top from then on. So you just want to make sure you've got both tubes securely in the reservoir and not crimped at all so that you can draw water in successfully. And then right from the top is where you can fill from now on.
You see up here, there is a hole up here and a cover for that.
So Mark, were you doing a little bit of work on that portafilter?
Yeah, I mean, let's take a look. If we get a shot of these, let's take a look at what it comes with, right? So I'm going to just pop this out. And here's a little trick. If you're newer to espresso, for popping out a portafilter, there are tools for this, or popping out the filter basket. So this came with that three-way pin under here. The first, and that's what you'd use if you're going to use pre-ground coffee. So let's take a look at the filter baskets. So what we have is a double shot basket, and this has lots of holes in the background, in the back here. That's what we'd use for coffee that we grind fresh.
Right.
Then we have a double shot basket that has a single hole in the back, and that's what we would use for pre-ground.
Yeah, pre-ground, exactly. So one thing to note, that is what comes by default in the portafilter. So if you take it out of the box and you don't change it out and you're wondering what's going on with your shots, it's because you're brewing with that pressurized basket. And likewise, if you're looking for it or you're looking for the two-way pin, those are already in the portafilter.
So that'd already be in here?
I've heard both scenarios before, so just keep that in mind if you're just opening it up.
And then we also have the single shot basket that you could use for coffee you're going to grind fresh or for an ESE pod.
Yeah, or an ESE pod, exactly. You do not need to use the pressurized basket for the ESE pods.
But oh, you know what? Let's get this thing plugged in because we want to get it warming up.
That's right.
And I think what we'll do first is we're gonna grind fresh for our brews here. So we'll get that double shot in there, and again, that's one with lots of holes. And I'm going to get it plugged in, so because we want to get this warmed up and we want to get some water through it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, the first thing we're going to want to do is run the pump to actually prime the water circuit. So you just run that when you first have the machine, and we'll open up our...
Oh, well, let's throw that decompression duct where that goes.
Yeah, let me just get another cup
so
here.
There's a little duct right here. There's a little place where it fits in right there, and that's what's going to remove water from the coffee.
And then straight up into that.
There we go.
And then basically we can get a cup underneath the tube here, also underneath the brew spouts. We'll turn the power on, run the pump, and then we're just going to open up our valve, and we're going to let that pump run until we start to see water flowing from the wand and flowing from the group. And there we go. And now we know that the pump has been primed, the water line has been primed, so we're not going to have what's called a vapor lock. So basically, if you ever get air bubbles trapped in there, the pump doesn't work very well to actually move those. You can use a turkey baster or a priming tool. We have those to basically unblock that line, but the best thing to do, honestly, is just run that water through the wand when you're first getting started. That also helps rinse everything out before you actually use that water for brewing your espresso.
Now, usually when I first start one up, I run a few ounces of water right through the group too. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And you know, Nick, what do we say is a warm-up time usually on these?
Honestly, you can go from cool to ready to brew in probably only 2 minutes. The aluminum boiler heats up incredibly quickly. On the Evo Pro model in particular, if we can maybe get a closer look at this group, we can start to see some of the improvements that have been made. The Evo Pro now features a brass group with a polished steel surround on it. So the old one was chrome plated, same thing with the portafilter. Now this polished steel, that's going to retain its luster for a much longer period of time, and it's part of an assembly that actually extends into the machine for mounting of the pump as well, so it does tend to be a little bit quieter. But basically, you could get some flaking on the old chrome. On the polished steel now, your machine's going to be looking prettier for a much longer time, basically. Portafilter, though, same idea. Those used to be chrome-plated brass. The new portafilter on the Evo Pro is made out of stainless steel, with, again, the idea being that the greater level of polishing is visible on the surface. Used to basically just be the brass that would be plated, and you could sometimes see imperfections in it. Now, overall, it's just going to look a whole lot nicer.
It's a nicer finish. And like I said, you know, you want your portafilter to heat up, so we want that in the machine whenever we can have
and
it.
You know, that's been something I've been seeing people doing a lot, is leaving the portafilter out as just sort of part of their kit of accessories. You always want to make sure the portafilter is locked into the group at all times so that you're maintaining stability in temperature. So you have to think of the portafilter as basically the last destination that the water goes before it ultimately flows into your cup. And so you can't be at a deficit of heat relative to the rest of the machine.
Yeah, and there's a lot of metal in that, so it really is going to make a difference in temperatures. While that's warming up, just let's talk about, you know, we had the other two baskets, we mentioned them briefly.
That's right.
Let's just talk about their uses. So I've got some examples here, and so you'd put either of these into the portafilter. And again, this one is a single shot basket. It's got lots of holes here. And then we have the double shot pressurized basket, which, you know, kind of hard to see, but there's just one tiny hole here. There's kind of a cross pattern on it, but it's just one tiny hole.
It's a little fake out.
And
but
then,
you can hold it up to the light, and that's how you can tell how many holes are actually in the bottom.
And this, with the pressurized basket, you definitely want this in your portafilter.
Absolutely.
So here we have some examples. Here's an ESE pod. So again, if you're going to use this, these are really easy. It's not, not the same quality of espressos you're going to get from going freshly ground.
That's right.
Which is how we're going to brew. But that, imagine that this is in your portafilter. You just place this in and put it in the machine and brew. And we'll go through the whole brewing process. And then if you're using I have some pre-ground here. Now, if you're going to use pre-ground, make sure it's espresso fine.
That's right.
So most of the time, it's going to say espresso right on the can here. This one actually doesn't.
It'll say espresso sometimes, or there'll be icons or graphics that will show the different acceptable brew methods. Keep in mind that a mocha pot doesn't use the same grind as an espresso machine. It's actually more coarse, so that's not the same thing. And if we look, our LED here on the machine now is showing us that the thermostat is set. It's ready for brewing. We're at brew temperature. That's why the light underneath our coffee cup has illuminated. So that tells us the boiler is as hot as it's going to get. But to your point, Mark, we do want to maybe run some more water through the portafilter if we're not going to give the machine time to heat up, just to
help warm that up.
Exactly, move the process along.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked, if you're going to use a pre-ground, it does come with the scoop here, generally one scoop for that single shot and two for a double.
One for a single, two for a double, that's right. And then obviously only one pod in the pod basket.
Right. So, okay, we'll get those out of the way. Let's talk, we talked about the BWT pitcher.
That's right.
Here. Now, there's a couple other options. What are the other options that we have here for, taking care of, making sure we're not going to get scale in our machine?
All of these are from BWT. So the first is probably the most simple thing. Actually, this one's nice and sliced open so I can take it out. This is a woven mesh pouch. So this is what BWT calls their best save. So the best save is using that same ion exchange technology. It actually sits right in the tank. These are great, let's say, if you don't use the machine super often. And what I mean by that in particular is they need about 10 hours to actually soften the water because it's just floating. Right. So if you refill the machine at night, you give it time to work, and then in the morning, that water's all been softened. But if you're using the machine multiple times throughout the day, you're refilling the reservoir frequently, you're not really going to be giving that pouch enough time to actually do its job.
Not the best option if you're giving your machine a lot of use. The pitcher works fine for that because it softens on demand.
You can also drink the water from the pitcher. You can use it in brewing kettles or things like that. If you've got you've got a couple of different varieties of brew methods at home, like for pour over, it just tastes really good in general. This one, do you mind if I open this? Or,
yeah, no, go ahead.
Perfect. So
take a look. I'll open the other part here.
And I think I talked about this in my video on the Classic as well, but water filtration is going to be one of the most important things you can do to really protect the investment for your machine. This is the BWT Best Cup. That's the adapter, so you only need to buy the adapter once. We do sell these two as a kit together, and then there's a little tube, so basically you want to pop that in, and there are 2 points on here, so let's see if we can get a close-up on the filter again, just so I can demonstrate. So the way that this works is you have a water intake, and then you have where the water actually would plumb into the machine. So what we would do is we'll position this inside the water reservoir and then have the water inlet so that it's plumbed to draw water through the cartridge. So it goes up through, out, and then into the machine. And so the Best Cup, it's a little trickier to get in there. The Classics reservoir is a bit smaller, but you certainly can do it. This is always going to get you filtered water on demand. The key difference is obviously you're not filling a pitcher. You don't need if you already have a Brita or something like that and you don't want to buy another pitcher, you can just buy something like this and then just have it draw filtered water on demand into the machine. Kind of like if you had it plumbed in, but obviously it's just going in the reservoir and then into the water intake.
Now years ago, machines always came with a water softener, which used sodium to do that, sodium softening. And that does work. It's just what we found and what the experts have found in taste tests is that softening with magnesium, replacing that calcium with magnesium, is a much better flavor extractor. And these also include, they also have the carbon filtration for getting rid of chlorine, all of these, right?
That's right.
And particles. So,
I mean, that's really, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head as far as the sodium, but obviously if you take a look, we're in the perfect camera angle for a moment.
Yeah.
We'll go back to that one. You can see, what do we have here on the front of our little box? It's a cup of espresso. So BWT has frequently sponsored the Specialty Coffee Association trade shows. They are producing water that is calibrated to improve the taste of coffee, but also to prevent lime scale buildup. So that's one of the key differentiating factors between one of the filter cartridges that we sell versus something that you might pick up at the grocery store. So, and that's why we partnered with BWT as well, is so that we could offer a product that will protect your machine, but also make your coffee taste better.
Yeah, I get asked all the time about the Brita pitchers and stuff, and as far as I know, there's not a Brita pitcher that really does major softening with magnesium. I think it's patented by BIT.
Not that I'm aware of.
So they do particle and carbon. They might get rid of the chlorine, but you could still get scale. And
That's right.
Scale is the #1 cause of problems in machines.
Yes.
No scale, no problems.
Exactly.
Okay. A couple other things, I think we could brew here, but let's just talk real quick. If you're not going to treat your water, and you don't have to if you're really resistant, but you will have to descale the machine. So we've got the Gaggia decalcifier over here.
Oh, hidden behind our pitcher.
And we have lots of videos on how to do that. It's on average use, it's maybe every 2 to 4 months you do that.
It comes down to how hard your water is. So obviously the harder the water, the more frequently you're going to want to do it.
Higher use, more frequent. And then we also have the Ernex Cafisa, which is not a descaler. This is a cleaner. And we'll talk about, so you'll hear about backflushing. Any machine that has a 3-way solenoid valve should be backflushed. It cleans out the internals of the machine.
That's right.
General recommendation there is 100 to 150 brew cycles or once a month with the Cafisa. Now I also got out I got the little scoops brush there, I think.
I do like this brush quite a bit. This one's seen some action.
Yeah, this is one I use all the time. But it's got the little measuring thing on the end for loading, and you're going to put this, what's called a blind filter basket into your portafilter.
So basically, load just 1 scoop here, use the brush to really get at your group, and then this is our backflush disc that we would pop into the portafilter. It's basically a portafilter basket that has no holes in it. And then to your point, Mark, when you're running it, engaging that cleaner with the water, the solenoid valve, which is a commercial feature, is ultimately what's relieving that back pressure down and into the drip tray. And that's one of the key things that separates the Gaggia Classic as a true machine grade product versus something really more at the appliance level.
Right, which is going to leave you with a wet puck and you have to dig it out of the basket. This one's going to be, we have a little knockbox here, another accessory you probably want to pick up.
That's right.
To knock out the puck. And they're going to knock out real easily in a machine like this. Again, just want to be clear that this is a decalcifier, this is a cleaner, this should never go in the water that's going through the reservoir.
Correct.
Never.
You do not want to do that. What you can use your Cafisa for is breaking down built up coffee oils on your portafilter, on your baskets. If the shower screen gets pretty funky, one place that you can't see is on the opposite side of it. So every, maybe like 3 or 4 months, it's always good to pop your baskets out of your portafilter, take a look, see, is there buildup in there, right?
Yeah.
Because you soak those in some water with some Cafisa, and then you can actually break down those coffee oils. It's all places where it can build up and kind of impart stale flavor into the espresso that you could otherwise be avoiding.
So let's make an espresso, and then we're going to froth some milk and maybe have you pour a latte.
I think I can try that, yeah, absolutely.
All right, so I'm going to pull the portafilter out and hand that over to you. And as you're going to see, I always like to wipe mine dry before I load it up.
You always should. It's important too, because if you wind up getting water, say on your tamper or something, grounds will stick to that and it can really interfere with the whole process from start to finish.
And that is nice and heated up now.
Yeah,
nice
very
and warm.
nice and toasty. So
we're using a Eureka Mignon Facili grinder, really nice entry-level grinder, pairs well, especially in the black here.
So something I want to point out too, we don't have a scale up here, but that is an accessory that I would recommend, even at the entry level. All the documentation information you're going to see is going to talk about brew recipes in ratios, talking about coffee in grams, and it's really important that you have a good baseline to know what you're doing. And the Classics portafilter holds, I would say, only about 16 grams in the double basket that's included. So it is a little more European. So the parts diagram refers to it as a 14-gram basket. That's why this machine is, can make pods too. They're a little more popular in Europe than in America. So I'm going to eyeball it, but I do not recommend eyeballing it when you actually get your own setup.
Yeah, it's really going to be best to weigh out your coffee so you can be consistent, because you put more coffee in there, it's going to brew slower. Less coffee, you're going to brew faster. And as you're trying to get into the grind size, it's going to be right for your machine. You want to try and use the same weight of coffee every time. You
do, and then the other thing you really want to avoid is overfilling the basket, because ultimately what you're doing is you're pressing grounds up into the screen. Not only will that impact your extraction negatively by slowing everything down, but now you're pushing coffee into the shower screen that you then have to work extra hard to get back out.
Yeah, and I mean the trick to knowing if you've done that is to look for an impression of the shower screen in your coffee puck after brewing, right?
That's right. You can always see, because the grounds too, even if it doesn't look like they're going to come in contact, all the coffee is going to swell once it gets saturated with water, and that's going to push everything upwards. You're also twisting, and as you turn, that's raising the surface just a little bit closer towards that screen. So I'll float around to the front.
And I saw, you know, Nick, I'm going to just show this because here's the tamper. These are very common with machines that it comes with, and I see that you picked up the nice Wiedemann tamper.
That's right.
Because you can't resist. Which is going to get you a better tamper. Look, you can get by with this for a little while. It's going to get the job done, but you're going to find very quickly that you're going to want a much nicer tamper.
And so one thing I also can't resist is one of those new Ocean cups from Not Neutral. So I've just got to give a quick
There you go. I know you like those.
shout out to these. This is the Vero. This is Ocean. It's their newest color. We just got these, I think, last week. And we have our set now in the studio, so I'm very excited to see that. Maybe I'll grab one of the bigger ones to pour our latte into. But basically, our machine's heated up. We're ready for our extraction. Literally, we're just going to push this button and see how it goes. And so, Mark, this looks a little fast to me, so we would want to adjust more fine. But I think that what you're seeing is really important because ultimately, nothing I think is really going to be perfect the first time that you try and brew. And so, as a result, it's important to know that it's really a process of trial and error. And one of the most important things that you should be doing when you're actually brewing your shots for the very first time is tasting them. Because ultimately, what do you make espresso for? Well, it's to drink it. And if you're not actually drinking your espresso, you don't know how it tastes, even if your extraction maybe isn't perfect, right? It's not to a T to the recipe you're following. If you like that, it's just as important, right?
Yeah, that's, I always say that. I mean, there's no, you know, what I like, what you like, maybe two very different things. And I know, you know, we happen to be using, I mean, we've got a couple examples of whole bean coffee over here. We've got the Gaggia, which is going to be an intense espresso, straight roasted in Italy. We've got our Crema Wave that we really like that gets roasted locally here. It's all specialty beans.
That's right.
But I know, you know, we have lots of coffee experts here, and some of them like a really light, super fresh, kind of real specialty coffee. These are both blends. Yeah. Which are going to be more like the Italian experience, if you will.
They're more like the Italian experience, and they're generally more forgiving, too. It's a bit easier to get them in a spot where it's, you know, passable good, right?
Yeah, good starter coffees. I mean, if you went to Italy and you said, I liked that, these are going to be close, especially the Gaggia here. You know?
That's where, though, if you invest in single origin coffees, higher end coffees, it's way more important that you use a scale, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Those are going to be tougher to dial in, and they're going to be more expensive, right? So you want to make sure that you're following the variables as best you can, because really you're paying more per shot, and so each mistake is costing you a little bit of money each time.
So what do you think? So we maybe let's take this out, right?
Yeah.
And take a look. So it comes out really dry for the most part, right? I do have the knockbox over there, and if I don't know, maybe we could just you know, fine up the grind a little bit and give another go for the latte that we're going to make.
Yeah, we'll go for that latte. And so this is another opportunity to sort of point out something that's really key. So we're going to go finer on this grind. And what that means is that ultimately we're taking the burrs and we're moving them closer together.
Yeah.
So as we're doing that, it's important to note that all grinders are going to have some coffee retained in them, unless you're using some really high-end single dosing device that'll clear everything out. As we move those burrs closer together, any coffee that's between them is being pushed closer together as well. So the key thing to do in that case is to make sure that the grinder is running so that the burrs are actively moving and clearing coffee out as they're getting closer together. So what I'm going to do, oh, we got a little bit of water in here.
Yeah. Here, maybe I can give you this other. You want to use a different cup?
No, that'll be for my cappuccino, I think. So we'll run this, and then basically, I'm just going to go.
And you're not going a lot, right? You just need to slow it down just a little bit.
Yeah, so on the Eurekas, so this is the Mignon Facile. We were at about 0 before. Now we're just slightly past 0. So that's something to keep in mind, is that on a lot of these stepless grinders, and that means that it's a grinder that doesn't have fixed movement of the burrs, you just have the numbers as a point of reference. And so what we've done is we've gone more than one full revolution. So we've gone past 0, basically.
Right.
On some grinders, 0 might actually be 0, like on, say, our Chiata
Yeah.
Life, for
Yeah.
example. On this
Others,
grinder, though,
it's just a reference.
it's a reference point, exactly.
But I really find that, you know, like getting the grind size right is probably one of the most misunderstood beginner aspects to making espresso, right? You know, like I'll just say, I mean, I hear people say, well, I bought some coffee, some pre-ground, and I try, you know, use a pressurized basket, but they bought pre-ground for drip. And
that's right.
It's not going to work.
You know, some grocery stores or cafes still have the ability for you to go up. They might have a big commercial grinder. You can set a grind. Always grind for espresso, or if they grind it for you, ask them, let them know you have a machine at home.
Yeah.
Because really, if you don't own your own grinder, you can't change the grind, and you're going to be stuck with whatever you have until you're done with it. So, you know, let's do our milk frothing. And so on the Classic, this is a single boiler dual use machine, and that means really that we can either brew or steam, but we can't do both at the same time. So if you're just getting started, I'll show you my preference, which is to steam first and then to brew. And my reason for doing that is that it's faster to cool down the boiler than it is to heat it up. And so that means our shot will be fresher even if our milk has sat for a little bit longer.
All right. Well, I got you the milk.
Alrighty. If you want to get me a shot maybe prepped then, Mark, again, we'll just eyeball it. And I'll go to the front here. We'll switch into steaming mode. And so you'll notice that our LED underneath our brew switch has turned off. Now we're waiting for that LED underneath the steam switch to illuminate.
And since you changed the grind, I'm just going to, well, you were dumping it when you did it, but a lot of times, you know, you flush out a little bit of grind when you change the size.
First, too, it's important that before you actually start frothing the milk, that you purge any of the condensation out of the wand. There's always going to be water that's left in there, and so you don't want that in your milk. The other thing that's important to note, too, is that we actually can start frothing before the LED illuminates for the steam temperature. That basically just means that it's reached the programmed temp. But if you start beforehand, the boiler will still be heating up as the machine is frothing. So in this case, though, we are ready. I'll just put my pitcher in. I'm using 4 ounces of milk. And really, we're getting a great roll right off the bat. That little chirping sound, that's some air being introduced into the milk. And Mark, if you can just get me that Pyrex ready.
Yep.
So what we want to do now, it's important to always wipe your steam wand off as quickly as you can. We're going to switch out of steam mode. We're going to put a cup underneath here, and then I'll take one more cup actually too, if you want to spare one for me.
You want this one?
I'll take that one, sure. Yeah, the taller one.
Taller one? Okay.
So what we're going to do is we're going to run the pump, and we're just going to evacuate our steam from the boiler.
So refilling and cooling down here the boiler.
That's right. So once we've got a solid stream, we can stop, close that as well, and then we'll be ready to brew. So I'll go in and lock the portafilter in place. I'll get my pretty cappuccino cup there. And then we can brew.
Oh, do you want to use a shot glass for that? Okay.
A little bit of maneuvering will get you there, but yes, I almost ran out of space. Let me get that out of the way. And that shot's already looking better. May even want to fine up a little bit, but I'd say that's looking pretty good.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we actually do have the overhead cam on this set as well, which is really cool. So we'll cut that, and then let's see if we can get it in position so I can show off my latte art if we can accomplish some. So, oh, there we go.
There it is.
And let me know when we're ready to start.
You're ready.
So I'll just pour a little base, lift everything up. And probably not my best, but
hey, not too shabby.
you know, and if your first latte looks something like that, I'd say you're on a good path. So, you know, really easy though. One thing you'll note too, there is a little bit of water that we see just trickling out of this wand. That's completely normal because the machine is going to have a little bit of condensation in there. And a good way that you can always check, right, to see, oh, is that the valve leaking or not? If we open the brew switch again, and you don't see anything flowing out of here, right? That means that all that water is just going down through the spouts instead.
It's just
if this was open, water would be pushing out like we've seen it before.
Right.
So it is just a little bit of condensation that's in there.
And you could just, and really just to deal with that, right, you can just swing this back over the...
Actually, swinging it back in reverse is probably even the better way.
Yeah, which I think I did. I'm kind of working backwards here. Yeah,
let's check in with Brian and Ellie. Do we have any questions from our stream?
Okay, Ellie, what do we got?
Yeah, we've got one question. So General says that their pucks have come out wet and the portafilter doesn't fully turn into the center position. Are those issues related?
Yes. So fully turning in, especially if it's a new machine, I mean, it is a rubber gasket that's up in there, so that it will break in to some extent. So you will find, and it doesn't mean the machine's going to work just fine. And over time, I think you're going to find that it's going to find that center position. But I mean, there are options down the road. It is a wear item. Eventually, that gasket needs to be replaced.
You do want to keep on top of that, exactly. So we have silicone, which generally those gaskets tend to be a lot softer and more pliable, so it's easier to lock in. If you're still getting a lot of water on top of the puck, there are a couple of reasons for that. So first of all, if you're too fine, for instance, that water, when the pump is running, has only one direction it can go. In that case, it's down. And when you've got a lot of resistance to the incoming pressure, that means less water is making its way through, so that when you cut the pump, you might still have some left over on top.
Yeah.
And that's causing you to have wet pucks. Now, if your grind is too coarse too, and everything's running through too quickly, you might lose cohesion, and then things will get more soupy anyway. So those are both instances where you really just sort of need to correct your grind. I would look at the timing as well to see, are you extracting within that 25 to 30-second range, first of all, and see if that is the case, and if that doesn't actually resolve the issue with the leftover water on top.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually a grind thing, but it could be maybe a really dirty shower screen or something. That's true. So the water can't come back up out, because it's got to come back up out of there. But a lot of times there's not enough pressure built up in the portafilter because the grind's too coarse. That's right. So it can't really pop it out, if you know what I mean.
Well, exactly. And so because it's just flowing down so easily, because there's nothing, it's just relieving the pressure that's in there. So it's like when you open a can of soda for the first time, you get that initial pop, but then after that, it's done. That initial pop, I don't know if you've ever taken a portafilter off when it's not finished depressurizing.
Oh, yeah.
And it kind of explodes outwards.
They call that the sneeze. It sneezes on you.
That's
you
what I
get
bet.
a little coffee cook. And I just pulled out, this is like a group gasket, so this would be up in here. This happens to be one of the silicone ones. These are really flexible, so down the road, if you're going to replace, and you will, it's a wear item. You will replace these eventually if you use the machine enough. We really like the silicone ones. They're a little more pliable.
Yeah. They tend to just resist the wear and tear from the heat and also from the repeated friction of turning it. One thing to note is that the longer that you leave your machine on, the faster those are going to dry out, just because they're exposed to heat for a longer duration.
Yeah, when I say leave this in your machine when it's not in use, you don't have to crank it in there.
You do not have to twist it all the way over.
I mean, mine would typically, this is a brand new machine, and you can see how far, that goes in with some effort, and it's not, I don't know if you can really tell, but it's not at what we call 6 o'clock. But
that's right.
After a week or so, a use maybe, depending on your use level, you're going to get right into 6 o'clock.
I mean, and again, aesthetically, 6 o'clock is great, but what you really want to aim for is, does your coffee taste good? First of all, more so than is the portafilter perfectly straight.
Yeah. So. Any other questions we can deal with? Okay, yeah, shoot.
Yeah, so Valentine asks, how often would you suggest descaling the machine if you live in an area with soft water?
Soft water? It's probably, it depends on really how soft and how much you use the machine. I think, our general recommendation is if you have what we consider not hard water would be probably every 3 to 4 months.
That's right, yeah.
So if it's ultra soft, it's maybe 5 or 6. Depends on how much, if you use the machine a lot, maybe.
If you're using it a lot and you're leaving it on a lot, the heat and those conditions are what allow for scale to form. So the longer it's being left on, the more likely you are to see that buildup. Because what's really important is consistency. So once you start descaling, you want to make sure that you're constantly descaling, because what can happen is, let's say you go for a while without ever touching it, you wait a year and a half or so, you may dislodge a larger piece of calcium, and there are small water passages in here that can become blocked by that, and then ultimately, because you weren't maintaining the frequency of descaling, that can cause issues in the machine. So you do want to, that's probably like the #1 most important thing. Apart from, if you're not filtering the water and you're not sure that it's not going to build up scale, you should be descaling.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and these just kind of eliminate descaling, the BWT.
That's right, exactly.
If you use them properly as directed, replace filters when needed, you'll never have to descale the machine. And I know this is what we use on, the really high-end prosumer machines that, run into the thousands and thousands of dollars. That's what we use. These are used in food prep, in coffee shops and that kind of thing as well, to protect their equipment.
And I mean, and so food prep, that does remind me, obviously one last thing on the Evo Pro, there is a new coating inside the boiler to help resist corrosion and scale buildup, but there are still other surfaces, other passageways within the machine, within the boiler, etc., where that scale can build up. So you do need to descale even with this new anti-scale boiler.
Unless you're properly treating your water.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Anything else? Yeah, okay.
One more question.
Sure.
Brian would like to know if it comes with a milk pitcher.
It does not.
It does not come with a milk pitcher, actually. So
No.
I would say this is one of my favorites. It's the Revolution. This is their 12-ounce frothing pitcher. One thing I really, really like about this, if we can maybe get a little closer, there's still some milk in it, but on the inside,
it's got the markings.
You have lines, exactly. So if you're trying to be consistent, one thing that you can notice, I filled it up down to about 4 ounces, and then I added about maybe 2 ounces of additional volume to this, because that's what you're doing when you're frothing.
Yeah.
You're stretching the milk, right? So the amount that you put in is not the amount that you're going to pour out, because you're adding air to it. And so knowing how much milk you're actually using instead of just kind of eyeballing it, again, adds to consistency. Like, I'm not saying you should put your milk on a scale and weigh it, but I mean, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. There's a little bit of a technique, and if you go to our YouTube channel, we got lots of videos for beginners to show you how to, really froth good and get into pouring latte art. Some of our most popular videos, by the way.
People like watching people pour latte art. Yeah.
But once you get that technique down, it's really not hard at all.
Not at all.
And anybody can do it.
And the whole process is very quick, too. I know a lot of people if you're good at cooking, if you have any kind of hobbies that are precision-based, like maybe you like to paint things, or you're an artist of some kind, or, the espresso brewing process, once you're down pat with it, should take maybe a minute and a half at most. So the amount of time you'll actually be spending thinking about it and learning it is going to be infinitely more than the prep time it takes.
And also the reward when you have that special someone, that's that nice latte art,
Oh yeah, well, and I
like
think
that.
the thing is too, right? Like, I would say most people, you can make a cup of drip coffee, right? I think that when you make your first latte, right?
Yeah.
That's got that real kind of wow factor where it's like, wait a minute, I'm the barista now.
There you
You
go.
can give me a tip.
All right, if there's anything more, we'll check for that one more time. All good? Oh, one more? Okay.
Yep, we've got another one. How often would you recommend backflushing the machine?
So I mean, we mentioned it a little bit. The general recommendation with something like Cafeza is 100 to 150 brew cycles.
Right.
But weekly in average use, if you're doing a few a day, do a plain water backflush.
Yeah.
Our techs always recommend that, to just use, so you don't put any Cafeza in, you get the backflush disc.
And we could demo that maybe real quick too.
Yeah.
So what is a water backflush? Well, it's what the name would suggest. It's basically we're just using water instead of the detergent. So here's a little coffee hack for you as
I'll
well.
show you how to pop that out.
So we get our portafilter. You can take the backflush disc and tuck that right underneath on the tab. I'm going to do this gently so I don't throw it out toward the camera, but that gets that nice and loose. Take that right off. We can see on the inside we're looking nice and clean right now. That's our polished steel. But again, every couple of months you're going to want to take a look in here though, because we can see there's coffee in here. and that coffee will stain over time, so we want to make sure that that gets out. So take our back flush disc though, pop that right in here, lock that into our group. It's always easier.
I'm just going to give us a hair more water there while we're here. I can see that reservoir's getting a little low. I mean, we
there was still a puck of coffee.
Oh, there was. It's stuck. We left it in there.
And so when you see your pucks sticking like that, what that can result from is actually if you leave the portafilter in as everything dries out, it can get stuck in there. And so now I feel like I'm brewing with I'm cleaning like a pressurized machine, you know what I mean? Where my solenoid valve didn't help me out. So actually now this is more necessary than anything, but we'll run just to get some of that coffee off, and then we'll lock in there. And so for the water back flush, we're just going to run, and you can run, I would say probably for 15 seconds would be a good time on the clock there.
You can repeat this a few times, right? I mean,
yeah. And you'll see that water just purging down out of the decompression duct and into the drip tray.
Like when you're doing the Cafeza back flush, you kind of look, you'll see the
it'll get foamy, it'll be bubbling and all that, and so you'll run that obviously, and then you'll run additional water to purge and clean out the cleaner. And again, we're running, nothing's coming out of this wand. The condensation's done, so the machine has no more drips coming out of the wand. I'll do maybe one more, and then see if maybe any more inquiring minds had some questions for us. Otherwise, I think we're probably ready to wrap.
Wrap it up here. I did so down in the description if you're interested in picking up any of the maintenance products. There's links for all that down in the description of this video. We're really happy to always answer your questions. We do offer the CoffeeCast, or if you go to our website, you can sign up for a one-on-one with a product expert like Nick here, who can take you through pretty much any of the products we have. Before you buy, and maybe even after you get it, if you need a little help with it, we're happy to do that as well. And lots of great videos on the YouTube channel. I know in our support, if you go to the website and you click on support up in the upper right, that'll take you to a location that's got tons and tons of videos on operating this machine.
That's right.
How to do frothing for beginners, the maintenance, and all that kind of thing. So there's a lot of great information and resources there for you. So do make use of that. And Nick, I got to thank you for coming out and taking folks through the Gaggia Classic Evo Pro. I know it's our most popular machine. This is the entry level. I mean, it was funny. I was talking to one of our other Missy, who does our CoffeeCast. She says it's kind of like the Honda, right? If you're going to get a first espresso machine, the Gaggia Classic Evo Pro is probably the best value there is out there. All commercial size components. Really easy to use, once you get into the method.
Made in Italy, too.
And all made in Italy. So, Nick, thanks so much. Thanks to you guys for watching. And, come on, check out the support section if you have one of these. It can really help you get the most out of it. I'm Mark. Nick, thanks again.
My pleasure.
We'll see you back here soon for more of the best on everything coffee.